Sydney, one of the largest cities in the world. One of the most beautiful cities in the world. A city that manages to support over 4 million people. Located on the east coast of Australia, it is considered to be one of the most livable cities in the world. But what made such a beautiful city possible? What was humanity's guideline to making such a beautiful place? I mean, if you're looking for the answer of that question, you need to come right here. Welcome to Circular Quay, the heart and soul of Sydney. Why is this the heart and soul of Sydney, you say? Because all of this leads to the Parramatta River. Wait. I know a lot of you might be confused as to why I call the Parramatta River the heart and soul of Sydney, but I'm sure by the end of this video, you guys will all understand. Okay, now to understand more about the Parramatta River, we need to actually understand more on how river systems are formed to get a general idea. And well, I mean, here we are. You see, most rivers, they start off from a high point, generally a mountain range. Now, you may be wondering, like, what's so special about a mountain range? Well, the truth is, actually, this is where it all starts. You see, there are two factors that come into play up here. Rainfall and melting snow. You may be wondering to yourself, how does rainfall and snow from top of a mountain range form a river system? Well, that's very easy to explain. Now here is the basic explanation to this idea. The water that you get from the melting snow and the rain start flowing downhill due to the forces of gravity. Now these sources of water start to go down a common path where they meet, and this is how they start to form a stream. And as these streams start to meet up, they start to form a river. Now that is about as basic as information I can give you. Here's the more complex one. Okay, to get a more complex understanding of river systems, we need to understand what a river rills, what a river channels, and what a river delta is. So as you can see, the definition of a river rill is a shallow channel cut in the surface of soil or rocks by running water. Remember how I talked about the snow and rain that comes down on top of the mountain? Well, it's that snow and rain that forms the river rills as they erode through the rock, sand and dirt. And this is how they flow down the mountain itself. Now this brings us on to the question of river channels. Now in geographical terms, a channel is essentially a narrow-bodied path that usually consists of some form of liquid, in this case water. Now, remember how when we talked about when the water starts to flow down the mountain, they start to meet? Well, when they meet, this is what forms a channel. So essentially those rills that we talked about, those river rills, they start to meet and they start to form a river channel. And now the final bit, the river delta. What a river delta is, we need to understand this. The fact that when the river system goes into a lake or an ocean, it carries a lot of speed with it. And when it enters that lake or ocean, it drastically loses all that speed and energy. And you have to understand that when this river system is flowing down, it carries down a lot of sediment with it. So when it loses all that speed, all that sediment disperses out and stops just at the mouth of the river and the ocean. And that's how, all this sediment builds up, the river delta is formed. And as you can see, this is what a river delta looks like. All that sediment has dispersed straight out and the river has flowed straight through into the open water. Now let's recap. You got the rainwater and you got the melting snow. Those two things fall on top of the mountain. There the water starts to erode away the rock and dirt and starts to form a rill. The rills, you get the river system, which then gives you the river, and when the river leads out to the delta. Alright, I hope we've all got a good understanding of how river systems are formed, because now it's time to head back to the Parramatta River. Alright, now that we know how river systems are formed, let's start asking some questions. Like, what kind of terrain surrounds these rivers? Yes, it may look like a lot of houses and a lot of buildings, but it isn't like this all the way. You see, we are only at the mouth of the river, the beginning. And as you go deeper and deeper, the buildings get shorter and the trees grow taller. To a point where all the buildings have disappeared and you are surrounded by nature. See, the Parramatta River has 3 forms of terrestrial area around it. See, you have the urban area, the CBD. The deeper in you go, you got the residential areas around Meadowbank. And as you get near Blacksland Riverside Park, you get a completely natural riverside area. And of course, you end up back in the urban area of Parramatta. Okay, so let's recap on the terrain around the Parramatta River. So first you have the urban terrain, the CBD area. Then you have the residential / urban terrain, more towards the middle. Then you have the completely natural terrain around Blacksland Riverside Park. And then you have the urban terrain again of the Parramatta City. Alright, now that we know about the terrain around the river, let's talk about the flora and fauna around here. Or the animals and plants. Okay, so the most common animals around here are probably the birds, as you can hear them in the background. And the most common type of birds around here are mainly the pigeons. Now, that isn't to say that there weren't any other animals around here either. I mean, there were ducks, and that was about it. And as for the plant life, well, let's just say there wasn't much. And yes, there were some plants and bushes here and there, but let's be real here. You're not gonna find a lot of plants and animals in a man-made park. To find that, we gotta go back to the river. To understand more about the flora and fauna around the Parramatta River, we need to look inside the river. And yes, that does mean going underwater. You see, underneath the Parramatta River there are many types of fishes, ranging from bass fish, catfish, bream, and many more types of fish. On top of that, there are many types of birds that fly around here. And as far as plants are concerned, there is a large amount of them bordering around the natural area. Specifically, an abundance of mangroves. From Meadowbank to Parramatta Wharf, the entire place is just laced with mangroves. Now, if you're wondering what a mangrove is essentially a small shrub or tree that grows in brackish waters. It is also a term used to describe coastal or tropical vegetation. Let's recap on what we just talked about. So as far as fauna is concerned, we have the pigeons, the ducks, the fish, and those fish include the bream, the carp, the catfish, and all of these. As far as fauna is concerned, you have the bushes and shrubs planted by people, and you have the immense amount of mangroves lining the entire river. And besides those two, there aren't really many other large concentrations of plant species. Time to head back to the river. Alright, now that we know a bit more about the surroundings of the Parramatta River, let's ask ourselves this. How are humans utilizing this river system? Let's start going through this one by one. The first thing that comes to mind is a drainage system. You see, this drainage source right here, we're located under, is actually located right here on the map. And if you look closely, that means all these drains run through these parts of the city and these parts of the city. Here's the drainage system from the left, and here it is from the right side. There are multiple drainage systems just like this all across the river. Now, it isn't just drainage systems that we use this river for. The Parramatta River is heavily utilized for transportation. Well, I mean, that's how I got here. You see, daily there's about 9 ferries that travel up from Circular Quay to Parramatta Wharf. And beyond that, it gives us humans a precious source of water. Something we use for cooking, cleaning, eating, drinking. Just about most of the things in our lives revolve around water. There is a great deal of benefits that river systems provide to us humans. Think about it. Sydney may not have even been possible without the Parramatta River. Early settlers used the Parramatta River as a source of fresh water and food as they moved into the inner west. You see, Sydney mainly started around the Parramatta River, and from there it worked its way to the north, the west, and the south. The reason why river systems are so beneficial to humans is because without them, human settlements would have been a lot more difficult than they are now. Think about it. The Egyptians had the Nile River. India has the Ganges River. China has the Yangtze River. River systems are so beneficial to humans is because, generally speaking, they start inland, which means that the coastal population, the early population, they use that river system to go deeper inland, to expand their population out. And they do this by utilizing the fish, the water, all that thing that the river provides you. That's why I say the Parramatta River is the heart and soul of Sydney. Now, we need to ask ourselves this. What do we as people do around river systems? Specifically, what do we do around the Parramatta River? Now, unfortunately, we arrived in a later time of day, so we couldn't record people doing these, but we can confirm that people do things such as running, jogging, walking, fishing, and sometimes people just generally go out to hang out there. Now, that doesn't mean that you should be jumping into these waters either. These waters are very polluted. Also, it's illegal. Speaking of dirty waters, you see, all these human interactions that go on around the river system, they start to have a negative impact on it. And of course, I mean pollution. You see, pollution is becoming a major issue for the rivers around the world. You see, every day, 2 million tons of sewage, industrial, and agricultural waste are being discharged into the world's waters. That is the equivalent of the entire human population. These effects are very visible around the Parramatta River. You see, these videos were taken in River Foreshore Park, underneath this very bridge, which means that the pigeons and the ducks we saw earlier dwell on a polluted river. very lucky though, because the Parramatta River has a very minimum amount of pollution in it to begin with compared to other river systems around the world. And on top of that, our government has some great plans for it. See, our government has invested $5 million into a cleanup project of the Parramatta River. This means that by 2025, the Parramatta River will be officially declared as swimmable waters. So, now that we know all that, let's recap on all the things that we learned. We learned how river systems are formed, what kind of terrain surrounds the Parramatta River, what kind of flora and fauna surround the Parramatta River, how are we utilizing the river system, what benefits river systems provide to us humans, what people do around the Parramatta River, what is the largest threat to the river system, and what our government is doing to protect it. This is Aeon, and I hope you enjoyed my documentary.